The only thing that matters is what you choose to be now.
You're right.
Then I choose
This!
Many months later.
Hey, you know what? Forget about it, huh? Forget about it.
Yeah, fuck it, man. Can't be worried about that shit. Life goes on, man.
Kung Fu Panda is one of those films that is always going to have a special place in my heart because I grew up with the first two movies and I consider the first one a modern day masterpiece, with the second one being a really great sequel. The third one I had its issues, but I still think it's a really amazing film. But now the fourth one is finally coming out. It has been 8 years since the last Kung Fu Panda, so I've been really rusty on these characters. I did not rewatch them before this movie, but I really have a lot of thoughts because I remember a lot of the plot points from the first one, the second one. I especially remember being really shocked with the second film, with its plot. It has some really heavy themes, especially with the villain of that film, and I have a lot of thoughts on the fourth one, focusing more on the villains of the story because there's a lot of plot elements with a new villain, with her motivations that I want to talk about and explain a little bit of the problems I had with it, and just like talk about the movie as a whole because I really liked it. And yeah, I just feel like this movie has had a lot of controversy, and I want to add to that discussion a little bit, so bear with me. So the plot of this movie takes us a couple of years forward in time, where Po is now a spiritual leader and Shifu's still training him a little bit to become the next successor of Oogway, which is a spiritual master. And he's on this journey of trying to like reach that stage. And one of the themes of the movie is that Po has really been killing it as the Dragon Warrior. He's been like helping people in need, but now it's time to follow the next step and go into that next step in the spiritual succession of this character. And that's one of the themes that I like, and it's mentioned a lot throughout the movie, is the theme of change. It's mentioned a lot of times, and that is also shown with the new character and possibly new protagonist of the films, which is Zhen. It's a fox that is trying to be like the best version of herself. She has a lot of flaws. She's kind of like a thief in the beginning, and soon Po starts training her and going on this adventure that also has a pretty noticeable lack of the Furious 5 characters, which is one of my favorites. That is something that a lot of people complain in this movie, and it's something that I don't think it's that big of a deal. It's that characters such as Viper, Tigress are not in the movie, but I feel like it does enough to set itself apart, and I feel like not every single film of a franchise has to have like some of the same characters. They can like switch things a little, and if they appear in 5 and 6, I feel like it's going to be a little bit worthy because this one focuses more on those two characters. Also, the movie is just full of amazing jokes. It has a lot of fun moments that are very usual of these films. I feel like the writing is also amazing and sets it apart from a lot of the other DreamWorks movies. I feel like Kung Fu Panda has a lot of jokes, a lot of memeable moments, and I'm pretty sure this one will have a lot of also big moments that are going to be turned into memes. So yeah, I just really like this one, and I feel like the pacing is on par with some of the other movies, but I feel like the issue that a lot of people are talking about, and I'm going to discuss now, is the issue of the main plot and the main villain of the story, and also like a lot of different plot points to bring back characters from the past Kung Fu Panda a la No Way Home, which is something that I have a little bit of problem with. Because at least in No Way Home, like these characters that are brought back, like Spider-Man's old villains, have kind of like a plot and also like a lot of fan service. You gotta admit that this is just like something that really doesn't make that much sense plot-wise. It's kind of lazy writing, but it's a way to just be like, okay, it's just fan service, you know. I loved seeing Tai Lung again because he is one of my favorite villains of all time, like especially in the first movie. I feel like he was amazing. And also he's not just brought back for 5 seconds just to like talk to characters, but the actual Tai Lung has like a lot of conversations with Po. So anyways, I'm getting too far ahead of myself. I gotta explain the plot a little. So basically in this movie, there's a villain called the Chameleon who can turn into like basically any Kung Fu master. She can turn into like different characters, different animals, and she uses that to her advantage. She can like absorb people's like Kung Fu powers of the previous Kung Fu villains and heroes that in order to become the most powerful Kung Fu master in the realm. And I thought the plot like has some interesting things, but also I feel like it was just something to bring back the previous characters, which was done, like I said before, for fan service moments, and not much from that. And now I personally don't have any issue with that, and I'm gonna go with my issue like towards the end. But first I'm gonna mention a little bit of the characters because, for example, Tai Lung had a pretty big deal in the first movie. He had a really big role. He was basically Shifu's student, and this whole issue with Po really shows itself throughout the movie. He has like kind of a like reflection moment in the end of the first movie, but it doesn't really last long to justify like his basically like kind of like forgiving of Po in this movie, and that's something that happens with some of the other villains in the story. So now I'm going to spoil a little bit of the ending, so if you haven't seen the movie, beware of spoilers because I'm going to go into that right now. But basically, you know, the movie goes on, Po defeats the Chameleon in a really cool moment. I feel like the movie is just really visually appealing and it has a lot of great action, and that's something I really enjoyed. So he defeats her, he banishes her to the spirit realm at the same time that he liberates the dead characters that she stole the powers from. And then something really unexpected happens. Like all these Kung Fu masters just suddenly respect Po, and it makes sense with a lot of the heroes. And like I said before, it makes a little bit of sense with Tai Lung, But what it doesn't make sense is with Kai and also with Lord Shen, which are some really, really amazing characters that have a suddenly 180-degree turn. So basically, let's start with Lord Shen because he's the most stark example of this. In Kung Fu Panda 2, the main story is that Lord Shen is just basically this like psychotic, genocidal villain that like destroys all of Po's family. He destroys, basically tries to wipe out all the pandas, and he hates Po right until the very moment that he dies. Like, this is not a character that is redeemed in the end of the movie, so it doesn't make absolutely any sense that he bows down before Po at the end of the Kung Fu Panda 4 movie. It just makes absolutely no sense from a character perspective, from a writing perspective, and that's something I had the issue with. Kai was also a little bit of a complex character. He was kind of like trying to absorb the chi of all the characters in the spirit realm, and he has like this kind of like character development throughout the third movie, which makes him a really interesting villain. But like I said before, like towards the very end where Po defeats him, he's like really determined in his quest, and Tai Lung to a certain degree too. And for these villains to suddenly have a chance to escape back into the normal world, like I have no idea of the logistics of the spirit realm, like they have to stay there or go back, I have no idea, but it just doesn't make any sense from a character development perspective that suddenly they're like, oh yeah, I guess everything's forgiven, Po, you defeated the Chameleon, you saved a day. To illustrate my point, like the Chameleon is a pretty evil villain. Like she doesn't really do that much evil stuff like Lord Shen, but at the same time, it's just like basically if you like at the end of this movie, imagine if Kung Fu Panda 5, she came back and she was just like, oh no, I'm suddenly a good person now. You banished me to the Shadow Realm, but I guess I'm a good person now. It just doesn't make any sense. And that's my main problem with Kung Fu Panda. That's why I don't like it as much as the early ones, even though the writing is on point, like the jokes and stuff are always really amazing. Like the characters, the world building, it has some really amazing animation. You can tell from Kung Fu Panda 3 and 2 to this one, it like improves in every single way. But I just wanted to talk about that ending because it was just really nonsensical from that writing perspective. So anyways, those are pretty much like most of my thoughts on Kung Fu Panda 4. I think it's a good movie. It's pretty decent. I'm going to give it a 72 out of 100. It is like the least one of my favorites. Like the first one's always going to be a masterpiece from every angle you see it through. And like each one is just different in each way. And like they explore a different version of Po's story. And I'm interested in where they're going to take the story in 5 and 6 because I'm really attached to this franchise. It's always going to have a special place in my heart. And yeah, so anyways, I talked enough about Kung Fu Panda 4. So I'll see you guys next time and have an amazing day.